All right, week two, here we go. Couple of things I thought about the extra assignment I mentioned last time, and I'm thinking about how I can make the statistics we're looking at a little more interesting and a little more engaging, a little more realistic, but yet not changing the grading that much and making my workload a little crazy. So what I am going to do is actually not change the grading, but I have some extra examples that I have from last semester, kind of modifying them a little bit, but letting you really dig into actual data, not homework data, and that'll be reflective more of what the exams will look like, where we'll have real data to look at in StatCrunch, using some examples there. And so if you look under the content browser for week one, week two, you'll see some chapter whatever practice. And those are problems that I wrote. They're not from the homework. They're using real data. A lot of them are using some school data and then asking some questions about it. Like there are a bunch of really interesting variables. One that I think is really interesting that I'm going to put up here is looking at a histogram of the percent of students in each school who identify as different races. So for example, for white students, you have the percent who identify as white along the bottom, so from 0 to 100. And then vertically you have the frequency or relative frequency, and then you have this histogram. Now, what I find really interesting about this is you can see there's this big chunk over here that very low percentage of students who are white, and some in the middle. And then there's another relatively sizable chunk over here that are mostly white. And so this really points to a greater society issue that we have here, especially in Illinois, that I'm going to try to introduce periodically to you via real data. And this particular one is about segregation. Illinois is very diverse, but our communities tend to be very segregated, either hardly any white students or mostly white students. And that's just an interesting thing that I'll try to introduce different ideas now and then using real data throughout the chapters as we go, just to use our class and the new skills we're learning and some actual real data. This data is from the state of Illinois, and ask some questions about that. So we'll talk more about this data set. We'll be using it throughout the semester, but I thought this would be an interesting one. And keep your eye out for links to those extra practice, which will be more like what the test will look like and actually give you some really interesting things to look at. And I'll have solutions for those available, but I won't be grading them individually and they won't necessarily be assigned. However, you can get a C probably just by doing the homework and the quizzes in my stat lab, but you probably can't get an A or B without doing the extra practice that I have, because the My Math Lab, my Stat Lab, excuse me, is about basic skills and kind of getting some of the basics of it, but you can't really learn all of it without kind of stretching beyond what you can answer in multiple choice things. And so now those questions that are in that practice will be more like, giving you an opportunity to explain and create a particular graph from some real data and explain what you notice on it and what point is it trying to make. And that is really what I want you to be able to do by the end of this semester. So be sure to do those and email me if you have any questions about them.